Have you ever opened Instagram just for 5 minutes and somehow ended up staring at someone your age announcing their engagement, their new apartment, their startup launch, their baby, their six-figure month, their six-pack abs? They're so grateful for this journey caption, and suddenly your chest feels tight, and you think, wait, aren't we the same age? How are they so far ahead? You close the app, you stare at your ceiling, and a quiet voice whispers, I'm behind. Behind in career. Behind in money. Behind in relationships. Behind in life. What's strange is that on paper, you might actually be doing fine. You have a job, or you're studying, or you're figuring things out. You're not failing. You're not in crisis. But emotionally, it feels like you missed a train that everyone else somehow caught. And here's the psychological twist most people don't realize. The feeling of being behind has less to do with your actual progress and more to do with how your brain measures time, comparison, and worth. Let me show you what's really happening inside your head. Imagine you're running a race. You don't know the route. You don't know the distance. You don't even know the finish line. But every few minutes you look to your left and right, and you see other runners sprinting ahead in different directions. Some are climbing hills, some are crossing bridges, some are celebrating at checkpoints you didn't even know existed. You assume it's one race. Your brain assumes it's one timeline, but it's not. Psychologists call this social comparison theory, a concept first introduced by Leon Festinger in the 1950s. The idea is simple. Humans evaluate themselves by comparing to others. It's automatic. You don't choose it. Your brain does it to make sense of where you stand in the social world. In evolutionary terms, knowing your status mattered. It helped you survive. It helped you belong. The problem is that in 2026, your comparison pool isn't the 40 people in your village, it's 4 billion people online. Your brain hasn't updated for that. So when you scroll, your nervous system reacts as if you're physically watching peers outrun you. Your body doesn't know it's an algorithm. It thinks it's reality. But that's only one layer. There's something deeper happening when you feel behind. You were raised, directly or indirectly, with a script. Graduate by this age. Get a stable job by that age. Fall in love by this time. Get married before that. Have kids before it's too late. Buy property. Be independent. Be successful. Be impressive. Society loves timelines. They make life feel orderly. But timelines are cultural inventions, not biological laws. In the early 1900s, people married much younger. In the 1970s, career paths were more linear. In today's economy, many people pivot careers multiple times, delay marriage, freelance, move cities, and redefine stability altogether. Yet emotionally, many of us are still carrying a 20th century life template inside a 21st century world. So when your life doesn't match the inherited script, your brain interprets that mismatch as failure, even if it's not. There's also a concept in developmental psychology called the social clock. It refers to the culturally preferred timing of major life events. When you hit those milestones on time, you feel validated. When you're off time, you feel anxious or ashamed. But here's what most people don't realize. The social clock is not universal. It varies by country, culture, generation, even social class. What feels late in one environment is perfectly normal in another. And yet your brain doesn't calmly analyze sociological trends. It reacts emotionally, because underneath the feeling of being behind is something much more primitive: fear of exclusion. If everyone else is progressing and you're not, your nervous system interprets that as, I might be left out, I might not belong, I might not be chosen. That's not about ambition. That's about attachment. Humans are wired to seek belonging. Being ahead often signals value. Being behind can feel like invisibility, and invisibility hurts. But here's the paradox. The people who feel behind are often the most introspective, self-aware, and growth-oriented individuals. They are thinking about their lives deeply. They are evaluating, reflecting, questioning. They're not asleep on autopilot. And that reflection, ironically, can slow visible progress. Because when you think deeply, you hesitate more. You change direction more. You question choices more. Someone else might charge forward in a career path without asking whether it aligns with them. You might pause, reconsider, pivot, start over. On the outside, that looks like delay. On the inside, it's alignment. But alignment is quieter than achievement. Another psychological layer at play is what researchers call future self-discrepancy. This is the gap between who you are now and who you think you should be. The bigger that gap feels, the more distress you experience. If at 16 you imagined that by 25 you'd be confident, financially stable, traveling the world, deeply in love, and living in your own place, but at 25 you're confused, renting a small room, single, and still figuring things out, your brain registers that gap as evidence of failure. Even if your expectations were unrealistic, even if the world changed, even if you grew in ways you didn't anticipate, your mind is comparing reality not just to other people, but to a past fantasy version of yourself. And fantasies are always cleaner than reality. There's also something called the spotlight effect. It's the tendency to believe others are paying more attention to your life than they actually are. When you feel behind, you imagine everyone noticing it, judging it, whispering about it. But the truth? Most people are too busy worrying that they are behind. You're not standing in front of a crowd. You're standing in a circle of people who are all secretly anxious about their own timelines. Now let's talk about the role of uncertainty. Feeling behind often spikes during transitional periods, after graduation, after a breakup, after losing a job, after moving cities. During your late 20s or early 30s, when the question, "What are you doing with your life?" stops sounding philosophical and starts sounding urgent. Uncertainty activates the brain's threat system. The amygdala lights up. You crave predictability. So you look around for reference points. Who seems stable? Who seems secure? Who seems certain? And when others appear certain, your uncertainty feels like deficiency. But certainty is often just presentation. You rarely see the doubt behind someone's LinkedIn promotion post. You don't see the arguments behind the engagement photos. You don't see the debt behind the new car. You don't see the anxiety behind the startup success. Social media compresses life into highlight reels, and your brain compares your behind-the-scenes footage to someone else's trailer. Of course you'll feel behind. There's another fascinating angle here. Some people who feel behind were high achievers early in life. Maybe you were the gifted kid, the one teachers praised, the one relatives predicted would do big things. When you're praised early, your identity fuses with performance. So later, when life becomes nonlinear and messy, and you don't immediately dominate every environment, it feels shocking. You think, I'm supposed to be ahead. What happened? What happened is adulthood. In school, the path is structured. You know the test date, you know the syllabus, you know what A means. In real life, there's no universal grading system. Success becomes subjective. And when the criteria are unclear, comparison becomes louder. Now here's a subtle but powerful truth. The feeling of being behind is often a signal that you care deeply about your potential. It's not laziness. It's not apathy. It's longing. Longing to matter. Longing to build something meaningful. Longing to not waste your life. The danger is when that longing turns into self-contempt. When I want more becomes I am not enough. There's a psychological pattern called rumination. It's when your mind loops the same, worries repeatedly without resolution. People who feel behind often replay questions like, why didn't I start earlier? Why did I waste time? Why am I not disciplined enough? But rumination creates the illusion of productivity. It feels like you're solving something. In reality, you're draining mental energy that could go into actual movement. And here's something counterintuitive. Feeling behind can paralyze you more than actually being behind. Because when you label yourself as behind, you shrink. You hesitate to apply for that job. You hesitate to post your work. You hesitate to date. You hesitate to try. You think, what's the point? Everyone else is already ahead. But life isn't a straight ladder where the top rungs are permanently occupied. It's more like waves. People rise and fall in different areas at different times. Someone ahead in career might feel behind in love. Someone married might feel behind in personal growth. Someone wealthy might feel behind emotionally. No one is ahead everywhere. Let me ask you something gently. If there were no social media, no visible milestones, no age labels, no cultural deadlines, would you still feel behind? Or would you simply feel in progress? Because psychologically, that's what most of us are. In progress. The brain loves categories. Ahead, behind, success, failure. But life is mostly gradients. And here's where the philosophical undertone comes in. Time itself is not experienced linearly in the mind. Neuroscience shows that your perception of time speeds up as you age because routines compress memory. When days feel repetitive, years feel short. So by the time you look up at 28 or 32 or 35, it feels like time vanished. But it didn't vanish. It accumulated quietly. You learned. You survived, you adapted, you changed. Growth doesn't always look like achievement. Sometimes growth looks like leaving something that wasn't right. Sometimes it looks like healing. Sometimes it looks like unlearning beliefs that once defined you. And that kind of growth is invisible to timelines. There's also resilience being built in seasons where you feel behind. When you don't get things easily, you develop emotional range, you develop empathy, you develop patience, you develop creativity. Those qualities rarely trend on social media, but they create depth. And depth creates sustainability. People who sprint early sometimes burn out. People who take detours sometimes discover paths others never see. Think about history. Many writers, scientists, entrepreneurs didn't produce their defining work until later in life. Not because they were behind, but because their path required incubation. Your life might be incubating, and incubation feels slow. But slow is not the same as stagnant. Now, I'm not saying ignore ambition or pretend comparison doesn't exist. Your brain will compare. That's normal. The shift is in interpretation. Instead of, I'm behind, what if it became, I'm on a different timeline? Instead of everyone else is ahead, what if it became, I'm seeing a curated snapshot? Instead of, I wasted time, what if it became, I was learning in ways I didn't measure? Because psychologically, the story you tell yourself determines the emotion you feel. Same facts, different interpretation. Different internal experience. And here's something powerful. The people who have felt behind often become the most compassionate leaders, partners, creators, and friends. Why? Because they know what insecurity feels like. They know what doubt feels like. They don't take progress for granted. They build slowly, intentionally. They don't just chase milestones, they build foundations. So if you're watching this and quietly thinking, I should be further by now, I want you to pause. Who decided that timeline? Was it you? Or was it absorbed from parents, culture, movies, algorithms? And if you zoom out, 10 years from now, will this current season look like delay? Or will it look like preparation? Your brain is trying to protect you from social rejection. It's trying to motivate you through discomfort. But sometimes it uses shame as fuel. And shame is heavy fuel. It burns hot, but it exhausts you. There's another way. Curiosity. Instead of attacking yourself for being behind, get curious. What do you actually want? Not what looks impressive, not what earns applause, what feels aligned. Because alignment may not be the fastest path, but it's often the most stable one. Life is not a synchronized swim routine. You're not graded on hitting milestones at the same second as everyone else. You're building something internal while navigating something external. And maybe, just maybe, the fact that you're questioning your timeline means you care enough to design it intentionally. So the next time that tight feeling creeps in when you scroll, notice it. Don't fight it. Don't shame it. Just recognize, my brain is comparing again. And then gently remind yourself, this is one race only if I decide it is. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're becoming. And becoming doesn't follow deadlines. If this resonated with you, if you've ever felt that quiet panic that you're late to your own life, I'd love to hear your experience in the comments. Not the polished version, the real one. And if you want more deep dives into the psychology behind the feelings we rarely talk about, consider subscribing and staying on this journey of understanding your own mind. Because the more you understand it, the less it controls you. And maybe that, more than any milestone, is real progress.